So Donald Trump just did it, and he is shaking up the United States completely. This could actually be very good news for the United States moving forward, and we'll break down exactly what Donald Trump has done, because he's actually alluding to something that can eliminate income taxes in the United States. I don't know about forever, but certainly for the duration of his term, which would be a massive achievement. And we'll take a look at all of this and how this is going to work. But before we do, it takes just 2 seconds. If you enjoy this video and you enjoy these kind of updates, please do consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into it. So what Donald Trump is saying could actually spell very good news for the American people. Or if you listen to some of the more mainstream experts, what they're actually saying is that it will be bad. Because, supposedly, the United States already has it. Let's take a look and see what Donald Trump said. So Trump says that he will create an external revenue service to collect tariffs from foreign revenue. What exactly does that mean? And why are some mainstream experts saying that the United States already has this? And how is this going to work? Is it going to work? Well, let's take this back to the beginning. What this basically means is Donald Trump will now collect tax from any goods that are being imported into the United States. So for example, let's say you were buying a Mercedes from Germany. If the Germans have to ship the Mercedes over, then on top of the original price, the asking price of that Mercedes, let's say it was 100 grand, if there was a 20% tariff on top of that, you would then have to pay the $100,000 plus an additional $20,000 on top. So you're paying the extra 20% tariff on top of the asking price, meaning you pay $120,000 for a $100,000 car. But in terms of the reasoning behind this strategy, let's take a look and see what Donald Trump had to say about it on his Truth Social platform. So this is what he said, quote, "For far too long, we have relied on taxing our great people using the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. Through soft and pathetically weak trade agreements, the American economy has delivered growth and prosperity to the world while taxing ourselves. It is time for that to change. I am today announcing that I will create the External Revenue Service to collect our tariffs, duties, and all revenue that come from foreign sources. We will begin charging those that make money off of us with trade, and they will start paying, finally, their fair share. January 20th, 2025 will be the birth date of the External Revenue Service. Make America Great Again." Now I want to just take this back for a second to what was mentioned at the start of the video, with mainstream experts going on the record to say it's a bad idea because the External Revenue Service already exists. It's called the Customs and Border Protection Agency. That's there to collect revenue from tariffs, duties, etc. So there's no real need for a brand new government agency, is what the mainstream experts are saying. Let's have a read of this. Currently, US tariffs are collected by Customs and Border Protection, whose staff reviews documents, performs audits, and collects tariffs and fines, which are then deposited into accounts at the Treasury Departments. Now, although the collection of tariffs plays a role in the US economy, they account for less than 2% of the federal government's total revenue. The article then goes on to say, but the approach highlights Mr. Trump's desire to frame the imposition of tariffs on foreign imports as a means of offsetting the costs of his policy agenda. Trump believes that by imposing tariffs, especially on foreign imports, it can reduce the pressure on the US government to spend and promote domestic economic growth. Let's just go back in time for a second, because here's what you need to understand about this. Years ago, or decades ago rather, the United States funded all of their growth through the collection of tariffs. They taxed other countries. They never taxed the American people. But then, someone came up with a really bright idea, I say bright in quotation marks, to say, you know what, let's tax the American people too. And the system has never reverted back where other countries are the only ones being taxed. So now all of a sudden, you have companies in the United States that are leaving essentially because they're getting better offers elsewhere. They left because of all the additional taxes in place within the United States. Before, the American people weren't subject to those kind of taxes. After that bright spark came up with the idea to tax the American people, all of a sudden, companies are slapped with loads more taxes. And it's the American people who got the worst end of this deal. Because all of a sudden, companies that were based in America left, meaning people were now put out of work. That's the first problem. And also the collection of tax revenue. Because now, all of a sudden, companies that would have produced their goods in America are now producing their goods overseas and selling those goods back into America, boosting another country's GDP. So, essentially, it's a double whammy on the American economy and the American people. So it's no wonder the American people are now asking the question to say, how can we improve the financial situation for ourselves? How can we avoid getting ripped off by the rest of the world? Let's take a look at this graph really quick, just to kind of get an idea of the current situation in the United States and why Donald Trump has his reasons for coming to this strategy and this conclusion to try and boost the tariff revenue and reduce or possibly even eliminate the income tax revenue. So if we take a look at this black line here, this black line representing individual income tax, you can see we're looking at around about, it's between $2 and $3 million. So let's say this is $2.5 million in individual income tax revenue. This yellow line here represents customs duties, or if you like, your tariffs. Compared to the position of the income tax, the customs duties are a fraction of that amount. They're barely touching over $100,000. So if you look at the scope of difference between the two, quite clearly, the American people are the ones bearing the brunt of the cost. They're the ones who are having to make up and plug the hole in the budget, while other countries continue to sell their goods into the United States with very little to no tariffs being put in place. And this is why it's such a big deal. You know, for Donald Trump to come out and say, January 20th, 2025 will be the birth date of the External Revenue Service, the ERS. Multiple sources all say the same thing. This could be big. And if this is set up to rival the IRS, because Trump is more keen to collect taxes from other countries as opposed to the American people, then over time what we can see is the IRS getting smaller and smaller as the burden reduces on the American people, and over time the ERS could get bigger and bigger if more taxes and more tariffs are collected from foreign countries. And at the same time, and this is where I think Trump is trying to head with this, if he can take the responsibility away from the Customs and Border Protection Agency and hand the collection of duties and taxes over to the ERS, Trump can then turn around to the Customs and Border Protection Agency and say, right, we've taken away your responsibility to do that. That's now the problem of the ERS. Your problem now, control, protect, and keep the border safe. That way, Trump is able to execute two key parts of his political ideology and beliefs in one go. And when you think about it, it makes sense. You know, the clue is in the name. Why should the Customs and Border Protection Agency need to worry about auditing paperwork, collecting tariffs? The clue is in the name. They should be focused on protecting the border. But to be fair, this has been part of a consistent theme for Trump and his incoming administration. Because we've seen over the past several months, they have thrown several different ideas out there, testing each one, essentially trying to find out which ideas stick. They're basically doing market research. They want to know what the people want. You know, what do the customers want, if we want to use business jargon? What do the American people want? But here's the thing, and the title of this video speaks for itself. This is set to change everything. If you turn around to me and say, I no longer have to pay a cent on my income taxes, I only pay tax on the items that I buy, then all of a sudden you've completely changed the tax model in the United States, because then people are only paying taxes on what they go out and buy. If you reduce the income taxes or eventually eliminate them altogether, you've changed the entire system. And companies will also sit up and take notice of this. If they suddenly find out it's going to cost them a lot more money to send their goods into the United States, all of a sudden they have a big problem, because for many of these companies, America represents their single biggest customer market. So, if Trump then turns around and says, we're going to charge you X amount in tariffs for every good that you send into the United States, but if you relocate or set up a base in the United States and sell those goods produced in the United States to customers in the United States, you don't pay a single cent in tariffs, all of a sudden, you see those companies that relocated overseas come back to the United States, and they bring all the jobs that were originally lost the first time around back with them. So, not only do you get companies coming back, boosting the GDP and the economic growth, you also get employment slowly starting to tick up again as well. Now, in the true spirit of things, I will believe it when I see it, because we, of course, don't know what's going to happen in the future. All I know is Donald Trump is returning to the White House on January 20th, 2025, and he is set to put in place tariffs as a form of reducing income tax with a view to eliminating it altogether. We could also see hundreds of executive orders being signed on January 20th. What they entail remains to be seen. But if the tariffs are one of them, then it will be very interesting to see the breakdown of who's being charged the most overseas. Will it be Canada? Will it be Mexico? Will it be China? Will it be the European Union? That all remains to be seen. Who does Trump view as the biggest competitors to the United States? So let's wait and see what happens. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this situation as well. Do you agree with Trump's tariffs? Do you disagree with them? What strategy would you prefer to see put in place going into 2025? Let me know your thoughts down below. All views are welcome. Of course, I'll be returning soon in the coming weeks, but until then, see you all later and take care.